Welcome everybody to our Lift Up live broadcast this month. And today we're here talking about curating cultures of belonging and inclusivity. So if you're completely new to a Lift Up live broadcast, then welcome. This has been almost 3 years since Fraser-Dove launched Lift Up, the Women in Life Sciences community group. And this was really born off the fact that Fraser-Dove are an executive search life sciences talent consultancy, where we have built great, phenomenal relationships with senior female leaders across the globe, across all vertical markets and streams within the life sciences space. And we thought, as a group of women ambassadors, what could we try to do to give back to the industry and help connect, champion, and inspire other female leaders within this space? But that is whether you're a manager, you're a leader, you're a C-suite member, maybe seeking out board level roles, or whether you are on a very early journey, you've just finished university, you're in academia, and you're looking at all the different options that you can do to get into STEM or the life sciences space. So this is really about connecting, networking, and hopefully inspiring our future leaders of this industry. So, as some of you may have joined before, this is an interactive event. We try to keep it as interactive as possible. So when you join, in the comments, please pop it in and say where it is you're dialing from, say hello. We get a complete range of individuals across the globe, from America to Asia to Europe. So we try to suit this time frame to get all time zones involved. So pop into the comments where it is you're dialing in from, say hello. And then as we move throughout the live broadcast, if I could kindly ask, if you've got questions, pop in a queue in front of the comment, and I will try to navigate through the comments and bring those questions up towards the end of our live broadcast. We've got 3 phenomenal leaders within the HR and people cultural space within our life sciences industry that we're in. So I can't wait to bring them into this conversation. And very quickly, I am Louise Williams. So I've hosted this now for coming up to 3 years, I think 28 live broadcasts. We've had over 100,000 global views. I've had nearly 80 key speakers as well as part of this journey. So thank you for all of those individuals and the ambassadors internally that keep this live broadcast and community group going. So yes, without further ado, I'm going to bring in Lisa. Lisa, it's lovely to have you here today. If you wouldn't mind doing an introduction to the audience for us.
Thanks, Louise. It's really exciting to be here today. Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa DiPaolo, and I'm currently the CHRO at Karyopharm Therapeutics. Karyopharm is a publicly traded biotech company really focused on cancer treatment. I have over 25 years of experience in life sciences, so I've worked at really large global organizations, and I've kind of gone progressively smaller over the course of my career, but I've worked at organizations such as Pfizer, Novartis, a UK-based firm called Smiths Medical, Biogen, Ipsen, prior to coming to Karyopharm, where I've been for almost 3 years now. I would say a consistent theme within my career has really been around transformation and culture change. And although I initially entered into HR by chance, I think many people often have, I've really come to see it as a critical value driver for organizations, really being the influencer of culture and performance in very meaningful ways. So I'm delighted to be here today along with these fabulous ladies here.
Thank you, Lisa. Great introduction. And I'm really looking forward to diving into this conversation with you, because I think having the breadth and depth of experience, not only internationally, different countries, but also different size of organizations, I think it's going to be great to hear some of your experiences and journeys. And then Beth, thank you so much for joining us as well today. If you could do an introduction to the audience for us.
Thank you so much, Louise, and hello to Lisa. Hi, everybody. I'm Beth McCormick, and I lead talent management and organizational effectiveness for North America at Hoya Vision Care. Hoya is a global leader in optical technology, and we partner with eye care professionals to improve vision and quality of life for patients around the world. In my role, I'm responsible for everything from building leadership to learning programs to shaping performance management to driving succession planning and organizational development. So much fun work and always plenty to do. My work really sits at that intersection of strategy and people, making sure that we have talent, culture, and capabilities to support the business growth across the US and Canada. Now, I am relatively new to life sciences. Fraser Dove actually stole me away from renewable energy about 18 months ago. And what's been clear to me from the start is how critical inclusion is in such a skilled and mission-driven industry, and that is something I care so very deeply about. So my experience goes across multiple industries. Aside from renewable energy, I have also been in the space of organizations such as Chipotle Mexican Grill and Whole Foods Market. And I've worked really hard over the past few years to be involved in activities such as launching programs to elevate women in leadership, supporting efforts to create more inclusive and promotion and hiring practices, and guiding teams to build learning experiences that reflect the people that they're meant to serve. I am so excited to be here and honored to be part of this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Great purpose there. And I mean, as soon as I fell into life sciences about 11 years ago, I can't imagine being in any other industry. So I'm with you in regards to that. So yeah, thank you for joining us. Looking forward to the further discussions with yourself and Jana, who's working for Novo Nordisk. Would you do an introduction as well to the audience for us?
Sure. So my name is Jana Rask. I'm heading up the people and organization within research and development in Novo Nordisk US. And I'm thrilled to be here today. My background, I've had a little bit of a jungle gym career. I started as a psychologist in an employee assistance program in Canada. And then I pivoted into performance optimization consultant in oil and gas after doing an MBA program. And then for the last 11 years, worked in life sciences as a HR business partner within Novo Nordisk, both in Europe, Middle East, and currently in the US. But I think the common thread there has been that I've really been passionate about culture and creating spaces where people can be heard and seen and feel a sense of belonging. And I truly believe, and I have seen, that culture really can unleash performance, but also purpose with the sense of belonging. So that's why I'm excited to be here today, is to have the conversations, have an opportunity to learn and share, and also move the conversations from aspiration to daily actions.
Love that. Thank you so much, Jana, and for your introduction as well. So I think that just going back to the audience very quickly, if you've just dialed in, please say hello and where it is that you're dialing in from. And if you've got any questions, obviously for the key speakers here, I'm going to try and navigate as best as possible through the comments, but just pop your cue in front of any question and I'll try and bring them up onto the screen. We've already got quite a few people dialing in here. We've got Jacob from South Carolina. Thanks so much for joining, Jacob. We've got Laurie as well, who I know well. Laurie Davis, thank you so much for dialing in from NC. We've got Libette, and Libette's been with us for about 3 years now, dialing in from New Jersey. She's a regular, which is great. Our CCO, Andrew, as well, is dialing in from the UK. We've got somebody else as well, Mr. Hogue from... I'm not sure where it is you're dialing in from, but good morning. So it sounds like different time zones to myself here in the UK. But yeah, keep them coming through. It's great to hear where it is you're dialing in from and pop in those questions as we go. But look, the reason why we decided to talk about culture and belonging and inclusivity as a topic actually this month is not only speaking to our community, speaking to you three leaders as well. It's clearly a topic that's coming up more and more, I would say, in the last 12 months, especially within our industry and space. I've been to 2 roundtables in the last 4 months, and some of the founders and those senior leaders across and around the table said one of their biggest challenges at the moment is culture and people, and it's making sure that they're keeping them engaged. How can we best look at giving that sense of belonging, make sure that we're hiring inclusivity and all of that. So I think that we felt that this was really timely in terms of having this conversation. So the first question I want to come to you with today is really understanding what today's culture and inclusivity landscape's looking like, and through your eyes and your experiences as HR and people cultural leaders, what are some of the challenges that you think organizations are facing today, especially post the pandemic period, maybe with hybrid working models, etc. So I'll come to you first, Jana, actually, with this question, if that's okay.
Well, I think with the speed of innovation that is also happening in the world, the competitive landscape of businesses become more and more fierce, especially I would say within our industry. And as I mentioned previously, I truly believe that culture is a key enabler for performance and innovation. And also with digitalization coming into the play, we need to be even better at working together to drive performance and ultimately find the best products for our patients that we serve. So it's a driver for innovation, it's a driver of performance, and it becomes more and more important in unleashing the potential of organizations.
Yeah, no, that's really, you mentioned the word together. And actually something I think that Lisa, you've previously talked about, we've been talking in the industry about the great resignation. Now it's kind of the great disconnect. And what do you think is caused? Do you think there's anything specific over the last handful of years that's creating a bit more of a siloed approach? Beth, I'll come to you maybe with this question.
I really think this has to do with that erosion of informal connection. I think we have really moved away from those hallway chats because we're working in more remote hybrid environments. And as much as people have enjoyed being remote, it gives us so much more flexibility. It does take away from that organic connection that happens when you are around people that you may not otherwise be spending time with. And right now, all of our connections, when we are in a remote environment, are curated, and so it's all very intentional. And I feel like this is part of what's caused us to lose this connection.
Yeah, interesting. Intentional as opposed to natural and authentic. Is that what you're saying there?
Yes.
Yeah. No, it's interesting, isn't it? I've got something else in my mind around Gen Z and technology and phone usage and the generation and perhaps we're in now and what the future could look like in regards to that. But maybe before we jump into that, Lisa, have you got any thoughts in terms of these cultural challenges?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just to offer another perspective, having worked now in a smaller biotech environment, it is a really tough market for funding at the moment, and we have a new administration, and we're seeing more and more companies, at least in the greater Boston area where I'm from, experiencing significant layoffs and whatnot. But I think as companies are going through these challenges, they've shrunk down and gotten smaller. And I think a high degree of burnout is happening within organizations. So employees are really tired, they're doing multiple jobs. And I think that's contributing to this notion or this sentiment of, maybe not being fully engaged in the organization, because there's a lot of burnout. And if there are people that are just loving smaller companies and they go from one smaller company to another, and I think it's just contributing or compounding more of that burnout factor. I do agree with what Beth said in terms of the connection, but I think burnout has a lot to do with it. And then that coupled with people not being face-to-face and just looking behind a Zoom all day, it's really tedious.
Yeah, I think you've absolutely hit the nail on the head there, combined. But this burnout piece is actually, we're seeing this more and more. It's been reported quite highly in the last quarter alone. And in fact, there's some statistics recently. I mean, I think it was up in the 70s for Europe alone. But actually, if we look at globally, there's 23 to 24% of employees actually feel engaged in what they're doing right now. 62% are present, but they're not really connected. And I think that 62 is about 79 across Europe. So, it is something that I think globally we're facing, just even beyond our industry.
And if I may add, one other part of the equation is that, as in the aftermath of COVID, whereas employees got a taste of flexibility, being able to manage their work and homes and children, etc., I think that they've reprioritized what's important to them. And I don't necessarily think that the days of working hard and putting in FaceTime and all that, I think that's kind of fall to the wayside somewhat as people prioritize family and life.
Yeah, I love, absolutely. I mean, there's so many different spider webs to this conversation. We could go down lots of different rabbit holes, but you're absolutely right. And there's something like, I think there's something like 83%. It was in the low 80s of global workers that now prioritize work-life balance and culture over pay, which is exactly what you're saying, right? 15, 20 years ago, it was all about the job title and the pay for the majority. Now it's about working from home, the work-life blend, the flexibility of hours, the benefits, it's all of those different things. So it's a complete different shift. So a question before I move on to this, because there's lots of other routes we can go down, but in terms of your environments that you've worked within, is there something that you feel like that's actually created great culture? Now, I'm putting you on the spot with this one now, but have you seen at a point in your career, especially when you've worked for maybe smaller businesses, larger businesses, that you've thought to yourself, no, this is what good culture feels like, and I've been there, and I've worked, or do you feel like that's something that you're still trying to find?
I mean, I think that the organizations that put people first and focus on people and are up with the times and react to the events that are happening. There have been many different movements over the years. We won't get into the Me Too movement and all those other things, but the organizations that flex and really put their employees first and are really deliberate and intentional about it are the winning organizations that I've experienced. And I've had the luxury of, working at many really good cultures, or working within many good cultures, and you just feel it. It's something that makes you feel good, and it makes you want to put in that discretionary effort in.
Yeah.
I agree with Lisa. I think that psychological safety plays a big role in that, and when you are in an environment that creates that psychological safety, you find yourself in a place where you want to be a part of that, and you want to also create that for other people.
Mm-hmm.
And really that's in those people first cultures that that isn't exclusive of hard work and driving for excellence, but really doing it through relationships and connections and people. That's where I have felt the safest and the best.
Love that, Beth.
And
and actually go on, Jana, you go.
I would fully echo that. I think that people-centric culture is critical in creating that. And we in Novo Nordisk, we just got our global engagement survey, and we have around 85,000 employees globally, and the engagement level is 84%. That is very, very high. I think for us, it's over engagement, which is the biggest concern. Is people are so driven, so passionate, where we really need to be careful in watching also stress levels, especially when we're working more globally in different time zones and flexing to connect. It's difficult. That's where we're also putting the work-life balance at jeopardy, and also ensuring that other aspects of people's lives are maintained in balance.
See, that's really interesting to hear that, though, because that's cultural challenges that you're facing, but from one end of the scale to the other, it's getting people in the first place not that connected or engaged, but then so far engaged that they're not getting burnt out. It's so hard to find that balance in the middle, isn't it? This leads on quite nicely to the next question around belonging, and I talk about belonging because I don't think that sometimes, myself included, before I was on this lift up journey, it's kind of, what does belonging really mean? Feeling safe, that's safeguarding, safe feeling that you were talking about, Beth. I know that that's now a really big part of belonging, feeling safe in your workplace, or safe in the role in which you're executing. Expand beyond this. So maybe Lisa, I'll come to you first. So what does a true culture of belonging mean to you? Do you think belonging is something that can be designed intentionally, or is it something that just maybe emerges from creating the right culture?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I don't think it just happens by itself, for sure. Belonging to me is really that, yes, people are safe, but largely they feel connected to your company's mission, why you exist as an organization, and have line of sight of how they can contribute at the highest level and be the best versions of themselves. So it's really a culture of belonging encompasses promoting autonomy, mastery, purpose, which really enables employees to contribute in a meaningful way. So I think that is very much designed intentionally at every level within the organization.
Yeah, love that. I think very well said, Lisa. Is there anything to add to that, Beth?
Interestingly, I'm getting ready to launch a project reimagining our onboarding process here, and a measure of success to me for that will be that after the first day, after the third day, after a week, the individual who starts with our company will say, I made the right decision. This is a place where I belong. This is a good fit for me. And all of that has to be very intentional. We have to really think about bringing people along in the process of design, and not just designing for people, but designing with them, so that we're able to create these experiences for anyone who's coming into the organization.
Yeah, I love that. And the onboarding is important, but I think, and I was speaking to somebody a couple of weeks ago about this, but it's, I think it's the same with training. You can bring people in, you can set the right expectations, but it's have to be then persistently feeding that through to continue that level of expectation setting. If you train and then you just forget it for 12 months and you don't touch upon it again, it can just go like that. And I think the culture is the same thing. I think it's to set those and design those intentional measurements and continue with setting them. Otherwise they end up, the culture then just dies. But interestingly, the other thing that jumps to mind from what you were saying there, Lisa, was the recognition element. I know recognition is quite big in the belonging space, so it's making people feel safe, but giving them the recognition for the work that they're doing, making them feel empowered, giving them the sense of autonomy. So Jana, is there anything that you feel in regards to the belonging element, and what does that mean to you?
I certainly agree with what has already been said. Maybe to add upon that, I think it's the belonging is also a culture where people don't need to compromise their authentic self with being accepted. So they can bring their unique background and experiences and perspective, and they're heard, listened, and able to contribute with that. And that is really where the collaboration and best innovation happens also, with that when they feel like they can contribute and really add their perspectives and uniqueness, and feeling that they are accepted.
Yeah, I think authenticity, being themselves, I completely agree with that, Jana. I think that's well said. And then it probably leads into a little bit of a, how do you measure culture, inclusivity, belonging? It's a tricky one for a lot of organizations, isn't it? And we don't want it to become a bit of a tick box exercise. I think pre-COVID, it felt like a lot of this language was starting to get used in the workplace, maybe a little bit more of a PR campaign for some businesses, when actually I think post-COVID, it's been a little bit more like, okay, what are we doing internally within our organizations to make sure that this isn't just a PR campaign, and we're setting the right programs and initiatives internally. So, Beth, you're rolling out this program at the moment within Hoya Vision. How are you looking at reviewing this so it's not a tick box exercise? How are you trying to embed sort of new operations to help with the culture?
We have to stay curious. We have to ask a lot of questions. We have to bring others along in the conversation, make no assumptions. And that listening has to be deep listening. It is not just listening for our own, confirmation bias or what we think is the right thing. We have to be ready to make some tough decisions and think about things in different ways. We also have to be really conscientious about not putting this on the shoulders of marginalized groups. And I think that happens sometimes in organizations where they look at a particular marginalized group and say, hey, what do you want us to do here? And that becomes very exhausting for that population to be the group that is continuously having to say, let me teach you about me. I think we have to be really intentional for those that are in higher level roles to really lean into that curiosity and to understand, and then to leverage their own power and strengthen the organization to influence in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Thank you for that. I think that there were some statistics as well that I read, I think it was last week, around the fact that there used to be 10, 15 years ago, senior leaders, executives that held a lot of the power when it came to creating and curating a culture, when actually statistics over the last couple of years has actually said nearly 70% can be with the middle managers, where the managers are on the ground and they're rolling their sleeves up, they're working with their team members. And the reporting that was being pulled out was that actually they have a real significant So I think that keeping open groups, listening, I love the deep listening. That's a really important piece. Is all really insightful information. So thank you. And Jana, what are your thoughts in regards to this question?
So I would say within Novo Nordisk, there, other than, our policies and processes that where it's embedded, but it's fundamentally embedded into our company values, which we call the Novo Nordisk way, which is our cultural compass in a way. It's guiding us how we treat each other, how we make decisions and build belonging. And I would say that there are where some of the examples of our values is that we value diversity and treat each other with respect. We build and maintain healthy collaboration with our stakeholders, both internal and external, and so on. But the way we work with it, so it's not putting things on paper is one thing, but how do you translate that into life? I would say there are two key enablers for that. One is our annual engagement survey that measures our culture, where it's a mandatory process to do follow-up dialogues in all the teams throughout the organization, and to identify both strengths, or what are we doing well, but what can we improve upon? And there are action plan and follow-ups on that, so that there's a continuous improvement. And in the survey, we also measure the follow-through. Like, did the people actually follow through with the actions? So it's embedded into the survey. But the second aspect, which is maybe fairly unique to my knowledge, is that we have internal cultural auditors, which we call facilitators. So they have a schedule throughout the year, going through different organizations to audit how well are we living our cultural values, where there's some pre-work and including self-assessments from the leadership teams and materials. There's interviews with leaders and employees, and then on-site discussions and feedback where there's a report and actions taken, and there's follow-up on those actions as well. So ensuring that their leadership teams are accountable for actually driving the culture that we're looking for. So I think those are two examples of how do we not just do a tick box exercise, but actually embed it into the way of working and ensuring that we have the culture globally in a similar way.
Yeah, and Jana, that flows really well into this question. So maybe come to you with this, Lisa. But I think that's really that's some brilliant advice. I've not heard of the auditing element actually. I don't know, Beth, if Lisa, if you've come from an environment where you've had cultural auditors before, but I like that idea, and I think that it's the measuring of the feedback that you're collating is, for me, the most important thing, because sometimes I can see that information can potentially be gathered through these types of surveys, but then nothing goes beyond gathering that intel, which sometimes can actually potentially be worse than asking for it in the first place, because you're asking it and then not actioning or not. So what sort of things do you put in place, Lisa, or have you done previously that works for you, do you think? Do you use employment surveys? Is that something, or engagement surveys?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We have engagement surveys and pulse surveys, but I think it's got to be both the quantitative and the qualitative. So the listening, as Beth mentioned earlier, I think getting insights from employees, perceptions of our values and behaviors, understanding what's working, what's not working. My HR business partners keep an ear to the ground and regularly hold those one-on-one meetings to have, get a more nuanced understanding of what's going on in the organization. I think that's important. I think also pay close attention to other indirect indicators of culture, like exit interviews, turnover trends, internal mobility, who's choosing to stay, who's advancing, who's disengaging. So we also look at some social media and do some combing of that to see what people who've left the organization are saying about us. And I think, it's the combination or culmination of those things that really helps build a more nuanced and comprehensive view of the overall organizational health.
Yeah, interesting. And that all relates to your EVP, your brand, your attrition, your retention. It's just all interlinked, isn't it? No, thank you for sharing. And then Beth, same question for you. What do you think maybe leaders should really be paying attention to? That question as part of this one. and also do you use engagement surveys? Is there any other tools that you feel like that you use to measure culture and inclusivity?
We do. And it's funny because years ago, I actually did work for an organization that had a culture audit process, kind of similar to what Jana mentioned. And it was such an impactful way to get in and understand what's really happening but you really have to have a mature core values, program embedded to be able to leverage something like that. In my current role, yeah, absolutely. We use multiple types of employee listening through engagement surveys, pulse surveys, exit surveys, et cetera. But one of the things that I like to talk to leaders about putting in place to help them are skip level meetings. If they have skip level reports, you can really start to understand some of the inner workings or things that are happening through just an informal discussion. You're really looking for those, what the sentiments are that you're hearing, some of those behaviors. And then sometimes you need to pull different levers. So I recently had a team that they were having a disconnect or they couldn't quite put their finger on it. So I leveraged the appreciative inquiry process, which is a strengths-based approach to kind of look at what's working well or what's worked well in the past and use that as a springboard for more positive action in the future. And that created a space of positive interviewing. So it wasn't, I'm coming here to uproot the problem, what's going on, but rather like, let's talk about the times when you felt the most engaged or when you felt the most energized. What was happening? What was that like? And when you create spaces like that, you learn quite a bit and you're then able to take action.
Thank you. Yeah, interesting. And I've not heard of the skip. So you might need to, that's an acronym for something, is it? What's
it's
that?
Not. No, it's skip level. So if you think about it, it's if you're a manager of managers. So
okay.
So the direct reports of the people who report to you. So, I will have meetings with the direct reports of my direct reports.
Yeah.
And so those are ways, especially for senior level leaders, to dig a little bit deeper into the organization to understand.
I've got you. Okay, no, that makes complete sense. Thank you for sharing. Before we jump on to another question, we've got Tom, our CEO here, founder, who's dialing in from the UK. So thank you for joining. We've got Samantha as well, dialing in from Boston. Keep your comments coming through where it is that you're dialing from, and don't forget to pop in a Q in front of any question that you'd like to ask the key speakers here as we move throughout this broadcast. But let's have a little. We've done a bit of landscaping on what today's culture and inclusivity looks like. Maybe let's talk a bit about building and sort of sustaining a positive workplace environment. So some of these sort of things we've blended into our conversations already. But what are some of the blind spots do you think companies still have when it comes to inclusion, especially in like kind of the hybrid or global teams that we're working in at the moment? Do you think that there's specific areas that maybe we could improve upon? So maybe Jana, I'll come to you first with this question.
I think what's challenging, I think, in a global organization is that you also have geographic cultural behaviors coming into play. And if you think of like the speed of collaboration across boundaries, it is really important to understand those underlying cultural elements, because it's so easy to jump into assumptions around people's communication or behaviors, while it could actually be just cultural differences that come into play. For example, our headquarters in Denmark, they tend to be quite direct in their communication, while Americans may find it very rude to come with a comment immediately without softening the interaction. And it's simply cultural differences, but that it could easily lead to friction or not really collaborating as well as it can because of the perceived impact of the communication or behavior. So having dialogues to pause to reflection, who are we? How do we show up? How is it perceived by others? To have a better understanding of the perceptions of the other and the needs from the other. So I think that's a challenge of trying to navigate through and learn to understand each other's perspectives.
Yeah, I love that. I hadn't I mean, obviously, we know that sometimes the different cultures can create different communication styles, but the question is that how can you make that more smoother globally? And I think that maybe there is a training element, or there is a passing of that perception and information down through regions or locations. So that's really interesting. Beth, what are your thoughts in regards to this question?
I think when this may be a little simplistic, but I really think there's a time zone bias when you're, especially in a global organization, where closest to HQ, or closest to where most of the work happens, is where you're going to see the majority of meetings occurring, or you feel like there's more productivity in that time. So organizations, my organization does a really great job of ensuring that there are multiple offerings of meetings, and people are willing to do that. It's not a regular occurrence. You don't have to be on meetings all day and all night, for sure, but it's very easy, I think, for organizations to make other parts of the world feel othered unintentionally.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. And Lisa, this probably comes a little bit to your earlier point around burnout. Sometimes I find that on the global teams, if you are from a communication cultural standpoint as well, if you're not getting that maybe flexibility, Beth, or you're having that openness with some departments, that you could be working all hours. I mean, I know some people that are taking calls, at 10 o'clock in their evenings and times, where sometimes having a bit of a structured setting of boundaries to a degree when you're working in a global environment is really important. So yeah, Lisa, is there anything to add to this, do you think?
No, I mean, I agree with what was said. I think just assuming a blind spot is assuming that inclusion looks the same everywhere, and it doesn't. In global teams, as Beth pointed out, I think the time zone thing is huge. But you need to create the space and be intentional so that while there's a meeting, you do give everyone a voice. So it doesn't mean because there's a meeting that's an inclusive type of environment. So
yeah, interesting. And this does come into this question, which was pulled in by the community, was how do you approach culture building in multicultural, multi-generational teams? So Jana, you've touched on this already from a multicultural perspective. How are we feeling around the multi-generation teams at the moment? Because I know we briefly touched on this when we had a conversation a few weeks back, but we've got different generations with different sort of expectations and different desires now in terms of what they want from a workplace environment. We talked about it's not so much pay and titles for many, it's more work-life blend and hours and benefits and things like that. So how are you approaching from a cultural perspective this sort of multi-generational team dynamic that we're in at the moment? I know that's a big question, but Jana, I'll come to you first with this.
Well, I think it starts with understanding, listening, and understand their perspectives and needs, and really being curious, and not just assume that the way we've been operating and running the business is the best way also moving forward. To be curious and see how can we adapt, but also educate existing employees on how do we best work together with different groups of employees, and then also look into our policies and benefits and how do we accommodate the needs of the future generations coming into our workplace. It is different expectations, and we need to adapt to the reality of the new workforce entering.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. And Jana, I think that you had a comment there within your sentence where it was like making sure it's right both sides, because I think that's what's really important, is we don't want to be leaning too much on what's right for business without taking the people into consideration, but equally we don't want to lean too much right down the people. It has to be that balance of both, because we see a lot of the Gen Zs are used to technology now. They're used to there's a lot of statistics out there, right, globally and on social media sites, where they're saying that the Gen Z generation are more fearful of picking up the phone, for example, or having conversations, because they're so used to texting. So much of their world that they're in is emailing and texting and it's that form of communication as opposed to verbal. So it's kind of like how are we adapting? How are we bringing that new generation in, making them feel comfortable, but equally making sure from a business standpoint we're getting the tasks done, and we're making sure that we're advancing from a business growth point of view. So Lisa, is there anything to add to this? Do you any thoughts around this?
Yeah, I'm laughing because I have a Gen Z on my team who the notion of a voicemail is really foreign to him. So it's a big joke here. So that's really funny to your point.
Yeah.
Yana mentioned shared values. They're really the glue in bringing diverse people together. Listening's key. I think cross-generational mentorship and practices that celebrate diverse perspectives are really
Love
key.
that.
At our organization, we really kind of over-index on promoting flexibility and work-life balance. And I think that fits really nicely with this up-and-coming generation that they don't really care about their pay as much as they do about having time to go and meet with friends and do, their life, basically.
Yeah.
So I
Socialize.
think those things are key. And also, when I lived in Switzerland, we had cross-cultural trainings to understand and create that mutual respect. So those are some of the things that I've seen.
Yeah, that's great. It's touched upon what Beth, I think, was saying. Is there anything to add to this, Beth, at all?
I fully agree. And I would just go back to starting with encouraging curiosity over assumptions, right? No generation is a monolith. And so when we really put the time into understanding, I love the idea of education. In fact, we just have our summer interns just started, our college interns, and the first thing that I give them is some content and e-learning around a multi-generational workplace, right? So let's educate, let's be curious.
I think curious, and the education piece is just really, really important. Whether you are a small 20 biotech or organization to a 20,000, I think that it's just understanding the different generations, what they're seeking, how you can make it work, listening, educating. Completely and utterly agree. And we'll probably towards coming to the end here, but with AI and automation, if we're looking at from a future focused perspective, AI is a huge topic. Obviously, it's causing a little bit of controversy in the sense of, we want to be using it as an enabler. We don't want it to necessarily take away the human aspect of what it is that we do. But AI, automation, and globalization shaping the future of work. So how do you see workplace culture maybe needing to adapt? And I think we've talked a little bit about the Gen Z, the newer generation, but do you think there's anything specifically that you're thinking about from a cultural perspective that you're going to maybe need to include or adapt to from a business point of view? Maybe Beth, come to you first with this.
I mean, we just cannot lose sight of the impact of the actual human connection. And AI and tech is scaling what exists, and if we don't embed inclusion naturally and belonging in what we're doing now, that scaling will be short-sighted. It won't have exactly what we need. So really staying connected to each other as individuals and as humans is going to be critical to ensure that we're leveraging this technology appropriately and using it for ways to help us organizationally grow our businesses versus taking away the foundation of relationships and grow through that.
Yeah, love that. And Yana, your thoughts with this question?
I think in the future workforce, we need to have, I think almost every single function needs to be multilingual, meaning that you need to have AI literacy as well as, or digital literacy, as well as the functional expertise that you have. And we will be working cross-functionally around the data. So the teamwork will be more critical in how do you translate the data into meaningful application. How do you challenge and do that in a constructive way without stirring conflict or working through conflict together? So the soft skills are going to be more important than ever in terms of teamwork, collaboration, leadership. Is going to be leadership, both emotional intelligence and leading teams and innovation is going to be critical. So that means that there's place for humanity in the future, which is a good, and these soft skills are going to be more critical than ever in the future.
Yeah, I completely agree. I interestingly think that we might be going back into a bit of a circle. And what I mean by that is, when we hit COVID, we obviously, a lot of redundancies, a lot of furloughed staff, a lot of decline with headcount, right? And a lot of companies were going lean and becoming more structured in areas. That year after COVID, we saw an absolute recruitment global boom. There was a lot of rehiring as people were stepping back out of COVID. Consequently, what we were seeing is a lot of people were being hired fast through virtual style interviews, not coming on site necessarily, hired on technical capabilities, and not on soft skills and culture alignment and value alignment. And what's now happened is, we've gone through that recruitment boom for a couple of years post-COVID. A lot of people have been hired. We've now seen something like a 40% increase in confidential searches over the last 12 months globally, where now sometimes these businesses are often looking and thinking, oh, have I hired the right people? We've hired people, yes, that are technically capable, but actually they're not culturally aligned. They're not aligned to our values. And now we've got a new mission and vision, and we've got different pivotal growth strategies that we need to go and execute. Are these leaders the right people that are going to take us on this journey? No, they're not. Confidential replacements picking up. So we've seen this cycle, and I think over the last 6 to 9 months, especially in our industry, we're now seeing that soft skills, the breadth and the depth, the CQ as we call it, the cultural element is just more important at leadership level than ever. So it's an interesting kind of cycle we've gone on, and I know we're using AI. I know automation's a big part of everything that we're talking about in the tech world, but I think we're going to hit in another 12 to 24 months that combination of how important soft skills is, but also AI is great, technology is great, but we need the human element. Like the human plug-in to all of this is never going to go away. So yeah, we're in an interesting time. But Lisa, is there anything you'd like to add in regards to the future of this work, in regards to this culture?
I agree with everything that was said, but I would just put one little plug in that it's important to create the environment where people feel safe to learn, experiment, and evolve, particularly as we just spoke about multi-generational workforces. I think some on the spectrum of the generations are more adept at, AI, technology, etc. So I think creating that space where they have that opportunity, feel safe, and learn is really going to be critical as well.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah, safe place comes back to belonging. Safe place to learn and develop. People aren't always going to get it right. A lot of this new technology as well is going to be foreign for quite a lot of people. So it's giving them the time and the ability to learn and catch on. So yeah, great. Well, look, we've probably got time for one last question here, which would be, what one bit of advice would you give your younger self if you were starting out, or you were, going back to your early career? What one bit of advice would you maybe give yourself? Beth, I'll come to you here with this question.
Oh, I'm going to go back to stay curious. I think that in my early days, I may have felt like I had to have a point of view right away, and stay flexible, stay curious, continue to learn.
Love that. Thank you, Beth. We've actually asked all speakers over the last couple of years this question, so we've got quite a nice little, monologue of all of the responses. So, Jana, what's your one bit of advice you'd give your younger self?
I think, standing up for the values and beliefs that you have. And I think for that, to speak up, even if you're uncomfortable. I think when I was younger, I was maybe more insecure or hesitant of speaking up when I saw things that are maybe not fully aligned with the inclusivity or belonging. So really about your silence or your voice. Your voice matters, and silence also speaks volumes. So I would say speak up because your voice matters.
Love that. Thank you, Jana. And Lisa, what's your advice?
Get out of your head. Don't be so hard on yourself. You're learning. You're young. Nobody cares about the comment you just said. You don't have to replay it in the evening in bed how you would have answered, what you would have said. Let it go.
Yeah, love that. Love that. Great bit of advice. Look, thank you so much for all of your comments. I mean, we've covered a lot from culture, belonging, inclusivity. I'll leave with one last bit of stat, which says that workers that have a strong sense of belonging are 3 times more likely to be engaged. Around 55% would resign if they didn't feel that sense of belonging. So I think that, building the right culture, listening, taking advice, creating that safe space and the recognition of staff. All of that, I think, can really contribute to a positive workplace. So thank you so much, because your experiences combined as well, from lots of different organisations across the globe, have really helped create this conversation today. So thank you. And for all the key speakers as well that have joined us, thank you so much. And for your comments in there. If there's any other questions post this, then obviously pop them into the comments. They still do come through. I've got Lift Up webpage here. We've got over 2,000 followers. Anybody that wants to join this group will also see when the next broadcast is being launched. And the other thing that I would love to say is thank you to you key speakers for joining. It's been an absolute pleasure. And we have around 2,500, I think 3,000 re-watches per broadcast. So if you don't get the opportunity today to have watched this, obviously you can share it with any colleagues, associates, friends. So that's quite common. So by all means, share away. But for now, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining, and take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.